Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah at 6 years of age used to study and take knowledge from one of the greatest scholars of his time. In fact, at 6 years of age, he used to go to halaqas to seek knowledge, and he did this with other adults. Now you look at a narration like that, like the description of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah at 6 years of age, and you compare that to teenagers today or even adults today. The difference is night and day. You know, back then, by the time they turned like 12 or 13 and they basically hit puberty, they were counted as men and they had to do the things that men did. They did real hard labor like outside. And at that age, they were not wasting their time like we do now at 13, 14, 15, scrolling, watching YouTube and all of this stuff. Instead, at that age, they literally had to get jobs. They had to provide for their family and also their future family. If you look around in the modern day, this is a trait that literally no one has. And I was looking at this in my own life, right? Like I have this practice where I look back in my days or like my weeks and the time that I spend, and I think like, how effective was it? How much did I actually do? And I notice, and you'll notice this as well if you actually do this practice, which is honestly a very beneficial practice, that you waste so much time in your day literally doing random stuff and things that are not benefiting you, things that are not bringing closer to Allah or any of your goals. And as I was doing this, I thought back to the fact that individuals, back then when they were like 12 or 13, they weren't there wasting time or they weren't there scrolling like we do now. They were there like working the entire day. And that was just the norm back then. Imagine now the scholars like Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, who memorized the Quran when he was 6 years old and was already seeking knowledge. What I realized is that there's a massive differentiating factor between us, you look at Gen Z and the way we are in the modern world, and these scholars back then. And that is the trait of having high aspiration. See, every single great scholar throughout history had this trait. And you'll see even like non-Muslims who have success in some realms of life also have this. Like, for example, athletes or businessmen, they have this trait of high aspiration. In fact, it's an aspiration that no one can match. And what I realized is it is like the biggest differentiating factor between you right now and the version of you that you want to be, the version of you that's completely productive, that is on it, accomplish all of his goals. That person that you want to be simply has a higher aspiration, and he also has a higher self-image. He believes that he actually is going to be able to get those goals and do those things that he has to do. And to be honest, this trait of having high aspiration, it's a very rare trait. In fact, I believe like some of the scholars of the past, they were like talking about it, of course, it's an important trait. And they used to talk about the fact that this trait, a lot of it is simply just given to you by Allah. Like you can't control it. Some people you'll see just have higher aspiration than others. And that is a gift of Allah. So if this is something on your mind, like you feel like you have a lot of potential, then understand that it is a gift of Allah and you just have to tap into it. But of course, it's not only something you're gifted with, when you're born, it's also something you could change throughout your life and you could increase your aspiration. And there are many key points to talk about when it comes to having high aspiration. I watched this very beneficial series by Abdurrahman Hassan Hafidhullah about having high aspiration. I'll link it down below because that's something that will really benefit you. He goes over a ton of super important things when it comes to having a high aspiration. Like, for example, the people you surround yourself with, certain things with your mindset, your beliefs, and all of these things are very important and beneficial. But I truly believe there's one thing that's the most important when it comes to realizing your potential and having high aspiration. See, the biggest change you can make in your life is simply how you see yourself, your self-image. Because I want you to think about this. If you're Gen Z like me, and there's a good chance you probably are if you're watching this video, we tend to have this idea that around the ages of 13 to 18, or honestly even to like 13 to 21, your life is basically just for fun, right? You just screw around and do whatever you want. And there's no idea that you have any serious responsibilities or you have to do anything important in life. All it is just, having fun. Now, what if we flip this on its head and instead of having the notion that we didn't have to work hard or didn't have to try between these ages, instead we had this idea that we did. Because this was the case with the people living in the past in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. When they were 12, 13, they had to live for themselves, right? They had to get a livelihood, they have to do real labor, and basically all of these things that make you a man. So the interesting thing is, we only are like this because we're conditioned by society to be like this. We only, screw around throughout this whole time in our teenage years because everyone else does it, right? Because it's a norm in society. So realize how much of a difference belief can have. Like, what if you just had the belief that it was normal to basically lock in and, live like an adult when you were 13 or 14 years old instead of now when you're like 25 years old? Honestly, some people live up to like their 30s and still are not truly adults. I want you to realize that this is a belief that you don't need to have, especially because this is a belief that is not serving you. Like, you don't have to waste your entire teenage years doing whatever and just having fun. You could literally be like the Sahabas, radiallahu anhum, who actually worked and, pretty much became adults or became men by the time they were teenagers. And honestly, this is where truly tapping into your potential comes from. Look at Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah. When he was 6 years old, he was pretty much already acting like a young man, right? He was already discussing with adults, seeking knowledge, memorizing Quran and doing all of these things that people now in their like 30s or 40s don't even do. And so this is a change I'm trying to make in my life right now. Trying to transition more into an adult and actually not, wasting time like a child or whatever, and not following what everyone else around you does. Just because everyone around you is, wasting time scrolling and doing useless stuff does not mean you have to be like that as well. Even if you're young, it's important that you actually try and be an adult, try and be a man, and try and mature yourself. Because honestly, like, there are some people in the world that never reach that stage of an adult. You'll see like some adults, some grown men still playing video games, still like doing this stuff, still wasting time. Like, how is that really maturity? I truly believe that being an adult has nothing to do with age. There are some teenagers that are more responsible and more mature than some people who are 30. Like, you don't want to be that guy who's 30 years old, still playing video game and still wasting his life. So yeah, I want you to implant this idea in your head that you can literally consciously change your beliefs about yourself. Like, you don't need to have this belief that you can't be an adult or you can't be responsible until you're a certain age. You can literally change that belief into something that actually serves you, into something like, I am actually mature, I am actually a responsible adult. And when I say responsible adult, I mean someone who's actually just living life properly, like, actually being productive and doing beneficial things. Like, for example, Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, seeking knowledge when he was 6 years old. And also, don't have this limiting belief that you need to like unwind for an hour at the end of the day. A lot of times we might come home or after long days of work, or what we feel like is a long day of work, we feel like we need to unwind and therefore like watch YouTube, scroll on TikTok, and basically waste time. I want you to understand that this is a limiting belief because you don't have to do it. I mean, think about the fact that people in the past, people in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, didn't do this. It's not like they scrolled on YouTube or wasted time at the end of the day because they felt like they were too tired. No, they literally kept working the entire day and slept when they needed to sleep. So the truth is, it's literally just all in your head. Like, you don't need to unwind at the end of the day. You don't need to scroll for your own like mental health and whatever. You literally just don't have to do it if you choose not to. You can literally just make a conscious choice and make it a conscious belief that you are a person who works and is productive the entire day. You don't have to be that person who copes and says, yeah, I need 1 hour to play video games at the end of the day or whatever. So yeah, I hope this is a beneficial mindset shift for you. You have untapped potential, and the way you tap into it is by having a higher aspiration. The way you do that is by, inshallah, changing how you see yourself and changing your beliefs. Realize that living like this was the norm in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so you physically have the capability to do it. So you might as well click and watch this video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.